back of the rim. Got it! Oh, the slam! Using Curry way downtown. Oh, what a shot from Curry!
So let's start with the series that almost got me smoked. It would have been the only one that I got wrong. It would have been the worst one to get wrong, and man, it really almost happened in reverse. Yes, it is the Celtics and Sixers. There did exist a world where Boston lost in 6 instead of winning in 6, which was my prediction, and yeah, they actually took 7 because the thing that I said they shouldn't do, they just went ahead and did. My biggest fear upon hearing that Joel Embiid was going to miss some time and that his knee was flaring up, biggest fear was that the Celtics team was for some reason going to drop a game against an Embiidless Philly team, give them momentum, give them life, therefore stretching out the series. It's not exactly what happened, I will give Philly credit, but it did not help losing game 1 and Harden turning back the clock after I had spent a prediction video saying I didn't think he had it in him anymore. To be fair, he kinda didn't have the old Harden in him that I was talking about. It was kinda in spurts, and that really hurt Philly because if he could have even given them on some nights like, I don't know, 60 or 70% of what he was giving on his best nights, they probably would have won this series. Instead, he pretty much proceeded to either be his old MVP form or a very, very weird and hesitant form of himself that I don't even think I've seen. One where he would get to a spot and just not want to take the shot, or he would overpass. Either way, I think that ended up being part of their undoing. But at the end of the day, they just were not able to take advantage. Boston got careless. You remember in the prediction video, I said I just hope that they don't get to that point that they were with the Hawks, and they did. I believe the ending of Game 4 may be the absolute worst lapse in judgment I've ever seen, and it nearly cost the Celtics a series. Jaylen Brown coming over to double with absolutely no help on his side. When Harden was on fire, I still don't know why he did it, but they survived. They survived because the 76ers just could not close out. Even after going on and mud stomping Boston in Game 5, you get to Game 6, and towards the end, after they've erased that 16-point deficit, the crowd has gotten into it, Boston is looking like they're ready to fold, there was probably a 3 to 5 minute stretch where if Philly would have just made one 3-pointer, I wholeheartedly believe the series was over. I think the Celtics would have not been able to get the momentum back. I'm not sure if you still end up getting that same quarter from Tatum. I just think Philly could have closed it right there, and they could not make a shot. They did not give the ball to Joel Embiid. And going to Game 6, I just kept saying the same thing the entire day. Philly better kill them right then and there, because they are not going to fold at home in a 6th game, then go into Boston and win a 7th. It's just not happening. Them losing this series the way they did is really just the most Philadelphia thing I've ever seen. They somehow managed to, in a series where Harden was able to give you some masterclasses, where Jason Tatum was able to give you some stinkers, where Boston as a team for a game just could not hit a shot, they somehow managed to lose that series. You got the Game 7, it was competitive, Jason Tatum activated Game Breaker, Joel Embiid could not get it going, and Horford, although I would say Embiid was getting the best of him and really the entire Celtics team for a lot of the series. In that instance, he just couldn't shake him. Harden was not his Game 1 performance or his Game 4 performance. They just had too much working against them, and an early PJ Tucker masterclass was not going to change that. The Celtics escape in 7. The Philadelphia 76ers are going to be kicking themselves about this for a long time, because from where we're sitting right now, their future looks uncertain. Don't know where Harden's going to end up. Don't know if Doc Rivers is coming back, who the head coach is going to be. What additions do they make? How do they turn this around? How do they get this roster over the top? They have to figure that out really quickly, and if they can't, they're always going to be looking back at Game 6, at those couple of minutes where they could have closed out the Celtics, saying, damn, that was a very possible title year. And if you're Boston, at this point, you've just got to tighten up, because, you want me to be honest, both of these last 2 series were longer than they had to be. The Hawks did not have to be a 6-game series, and the Sixers, it's gonna sound crazy that this series went 7 and I'm saying this, but Boston could have definitely done this in 4 or 5. If they just don't barely drop a Game 1 to an Embiidless Philly team, and Jaylen Brown doesn't do the most nonsensical double team of all time at the end of Game 4, that's the series. As hard as Philly fought, the adjustments they made, the hell that Embiid was giving them, the hell that Harden was giving them when he had smaller defenders on him, all of that, and with what we watched, I believe the game plan and the game flow was in place for Boston to have been able to gentleman sweep that series. There were a lot of things that went wrong, and I am going to talk more about that in the predictions for the Miami Heat. So let's go ahead and talk about Miami, because they eliminated the New York Knicks in 6. My prediction was that they were going to do it in 7. And if you want me to be honest, I kind of gave up on this series after watching in Game 2, where a Jimmy Butlerless Heat team almost stole the second home game from New York. After I saw that happen, I knew the Knicks weren't serious. I'm sorry. Jalen Brunson played his absolute heart out. RJ Barrett continued to be a useful NBA player after round 1, and I could not wrap my mind around how New York was going to win that when they almost got back to Miami empty-handed. Game 2 was the one that made me say, okay, so I can kind of put this series on the back burner because they are not getting a game in Miami. It's not happening. So here's the thing about the Heat, right? Jimmy Butler made 1 3-pointer in this series. He only attempted 9. The Heat as a team, they did cool off. They came back to earth. You remember that was my question after round 1. How could they possibly keep up the clip that they were shooting at that was so much higher than what they were doing in the regular season? In this series, they shot 30% from 3. A lot of guys that were scorching in round 1 were about around what you would expect in round 2. Thing is, the Knicks shot even worse from 3. It was very barely worse, but the fact that they were not really blazing either while the Heat were, that just did not help their case, because at the end of the day, New York did not have enough to make up for that. Jalen Brunson was playing 42.5 minutes in this series, averaging 31 points, 6 assists, just much better than any New York player on the floor, including his power forward, who has now pretty much shat the bed in 2 playoffs after having good regular seasons. I'm willing to shoot a little bit of bail for Randall just because I know he hurt his ankle and he came back and he was playing with that, but it just doesn't track well after what happened in 2021. Anyways, yeah, Julius, he was not good. He led the team in turnovers for the series. He didn't shoot well. He just was nowhere near what they needed him to be able to get past this Miami defense. Jalen Brunson and RJ Barrett by themselves are not going to win you a series against a team like the Heat. Mitchell Robinson did not win his matchup with Bam Adebayo. Remember, that was one of the key matchups after watching what he did to the Cavs. I thought that there might be able to be something that he could do with the Miami Heat and Bam, who sometimes is not that aggressive and yada yada. It did not work out. There was not enough positives in the New York Knicks category. Once you throw in the fact that for the Heat, Kyle Lowry looked like how Heat fans probably hoped that he would around this time of the year, and that Kevin Love has actually added a dynamic to this team, mainly with his passing. It's just there was too much there. They kind of got close to forcing a game 7, but the Heat closed out. And so that sets up round 3 in the last 4 years of Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics, a rematch of the bubble, a rematch of the Eastern Conference Finals last year that gave everyone a heart attack. We're back. And the Miami Heat roster is more or less the same. You've swapped a couple of players here. And yeah, they're also missing 2 guys. Boston got better in adding Malcolm Brogdon. So let's have a chat, because there is no doubt that the Heat will have revenge on their mind. They were 1 shot away from going to the NBA Finals last year. First off, I think that it's worth mentioning my concerns with this Celtics team. A lot of it came out in that Sixers series, and it was a more advanced version of what was happening with the Hawks. We've talked about how much Boston relies on the 3-point shot, and boy, it is night and day. And that seems like a simple analysis of, oh, they made their shot so they didn't make it. But no, when 3s are not going from Boston, they still have this tendency at times, until Joe Mazzulla finally tells them really try to be aggressive and go to the rim. They have a tendency to just keep trying to find the shot and just keep going, and next thing you know, they're in a 10 to 13 point hole trying to dig their way out of it. And it totally just depends on whether they start making the shots or not. Maybe they'll get aggressive and start and going to the rim and drawing fouls, but sometimes, like Marcus Smart said, the offense is really random, and it just doesn't feel like you're going to get a whole lot else. That is a concern number 1. Concern number 2. It's weird that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have been playing together this long, and I kind of worry about their continuity, because at times, It's like Jaylen Brown is the number one for a half and Tatum is just kind of taking a back seat. And then the second half comes and Tatum is trying to get it going. And even if Jaylen Brown had a great first half, now he's just chilling. Either the ball doesn't find him or he's not being as aggressive. I haven't really figured that out yet, but that bothers me. Something else? Yes, Boston has a lot of great defenders, but they are also small. They are undersized. Jimmy Butler abused a smaller Jrue Holiday in round 1. James Harden, his favorite matchups were pretty much anyone not named Jaylen Brown. And yeah, I would probably say Tatum too. The point is, if he could get a smaller guy on him, Marcus Smart, Derek White, Brogdon, he was more than happy to push his way into the mid-range area in the games that he was good anyways. He was able to get into that mid-range area, shoot right over these guys, and when Harden went to that, those were his best games, those were his best moments. However, he has a tendency at this age to be able to do that one night, and then the next night, for whatever reason, he's looking to pass. Jimmy, if he finds that he can have some success in getting smaller guys switched onto him, he's gonna go to that over and over. Oh, and back to the point about JT and JB. For Tatum, yes, fourth quarter of game 6 was amazing, game 7 was amazing, but boy, those dry starts where he just couldn't get anything to go, he was turning the ball over, he was missing shots, he was looking unsure of himself, that Tatum cannot happen. Because if you combine that Tatum with 3-point shots also not falling, you are at the mercy of the ref's whistle, and that is a very hit or miss thing. Now, here's the good part. See, the part about Tatum's struggles is he actually looked shook against Joel Embiid through a lot of the series. AKA, there's a lot of times where he would get downhill and Embiid would either be a help guy or he would just kind of be there. And Tatum did not want to put that shot up. It was like really Boston as a whole had to be urged to just say, look, Embiid is going to block some shots, but keep going at him, tire him out. And I do think that is eventually part of what helped them win that series is he was gassed and that was their only rim protection on the roster. After Tatum got some confidence in going to the rim, not only did that really open the rest of his game up, but then they got really smart in that game 7 and just said, come here, Joel, play defense in space, switch on to Tatum and stop him if you can. Of course, by that time he had his game breaker going, there was no chance he was being stopped. And that little wrinkle pretty much blew open the series. Now, problem is, Bam Adebayo is not Joel Embiid. Embiid doesn't really want to switch. He likes to just play it near the rim. He can protect the rim really well, but dragging him out like that, that's when the Celtics were most successful. Bam can pursue. He doesn't have slow feet. He can guard quicker guys with handles. So that gets me wondering, okay, what if Bam has a good series protecting the rim, but also switching is not the thing that really gets them to crumble, which I don't think that it will be. Out of the teams left, Miami has the 3rd highest defensive rating in the playoffs, so I'm kind of thinking about where the Celtics create advantages here. With the Sixers, once Embiid went off the floor, the paint was very sweet, but you do notice the Celtics did have to kind of slow down and think when Philly got into their zone, and once again, if the shot isn't going, the zone is beautiful. When Bam is not in to play big for Miami, I assume they're going to mix in some zone. Back to the point we were discussing earlier about the smaller defenders and how Jimmy was able to do what he did despite it being a very good small defender. If you're the Celtics, you should be looking at that and going, alright, he has got to see Jaylen Brown. He has got to see Jason Tatum. I do not want to start the series with Marcus Smart on Jimmy or whatever other smaller defender that they're going to try to put on him and just bring help. I don't want to see that. Jimmy's able to get to his mid-range. He's going to keep doing it. He's not going to get passive. Please, for the love of God, just show Jimmy one of our tall and athletic and pretty good defensively on-ball wings and bring help elsewhere. Definitely do that because if the Heat stay on earth with their 3-point shooting and you're able to use this bevy of defenders to at least keep Jimmy Butler at bay, you've got a real shot to get a serious advantage pretty early in this series. You just got rid of PJ Tucker. He doesn't play for the Heat anymore. You don't have to worry about his corner threes this year. If they're going to bring Duncan Robinson out there to shoot, he's going to have to play defense immediately. Boston is going to involve him in action. Spo in this series is going to have to think very hard about who he wants out there. And therein lies possibly the Heat's biggest issue with this series. You are missing 2 rotation guys against a deep Boston team that has a lot of versatility. This Heat team, they have been scrappy. They have done great to get themselves to this point, but I just fairly strongly believe that there are some things you can get away with versus a Giannis-less Bucks team and this New York Knicks team that you will not be able to get away with the Celtics team. With the looks that the Celtics are going to be throwing out, for the Miami Heat to win 4 games here, they're going to need a phenomenal series from Jimmy Butler, going to need a phenomenal defensive series from Bam Adebayo, and possibly some offense. Max Strus and or Caleb Martin are both going to have to be sparking from three. Kyle Lowry cannot go in the reverse direction, can't be out there looking old. They're going to need that, or if Boston's defense really mucks things up, they're going to have to make it equally as ugly for the Celtics, kind of like they did last year. If you remember, that 7-game series, it was ugly. Minus PJ Tucker and down 2 rotation guys, I'm not sure if facing a team like the Celtics, they're going to be able to make it ugly enough. The other thing to be mindful of is that this time around, Robert Williams is not banged up like he was last year. He missed a game, the rotations were weird. This year, if Joe thinks playing big with Williams and Horford for good stretches of time can give them an advantage, or if it is giving them an advantage, he is not going to be hindered. So look, I've got respect for what the Heat have been able to accomplish. I respect this team, I respect Jimmy, and I still just have questions about which Celtics team you are going to get on a nightly basis. So although I think with roster for roster, Boston should be able to win this series without much trouble, as a Celtics fan, I know there's going to be trouble. So this series, I will pick Boston in 6. If I really trusted them not to have some of the games they just had against Philly, it would be over sooner in my opinion, but save for the dumb things that are bound to happen, I got 6 games.